to European international standards and regulation. We're very fortunate to invite Mr. Francois Guichard to the stage. He is the Economic Affairs Officer and Engineer for the UN Economic Commission for the EU. He's a road transport and road vehicle expert, double masters from France and Germany, and has uniquely worked, I think, in virtually every major region of the world, including not just Europe, but the US, Japan, Australia, China. So we're lucky to have him today.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Salam alaikum. My name is Francois Guichard. I work for UNECE. In UNECE, we have the word Europe, but you will see in my presentation that we are not Europe. We are UN, so don't mix what I will say with what the EU is doing. This is something a bit different. So I will start with an introduction, talking about future mobility, and then I will talk about electric vehicles and hybrid electric vehicles and the challenges, and then I will continue the presentation with the subject of the presentation, which is the legal framework for international regulations. So we talked a few seconds ago about connectivity. We had a question about that. At the UN, we believe that there is a current trend for future mobility, and we have three pillars. We see the connectivity, the automation, and the electrification of the mobility. Today, we meet to talk about EVs and HEVs, so we will focus on the third pillar. When we talk about this third pillar, we have some challenges to make sure that we can develop electrification. We need to work on vehicle safety. So we work on the structural safety of the vehicle, the high voltage safety, fire, explosion, leakage, to make sure, for example, that firemen are not getting hurt when they intervene in case of an accident. We have also to work on environmental performance. We need to develop good standards in order to make sure that what we call electric vehicle is a good electric vehicle, or what we call a hybrid vehicle is a good hybrid vehicle. If you don't have the standards, then the marketing persons will do their job and they will call maybe a hybrid vehicle, something which is not a hybrid technology. So, and these points that I just named is something that UNECE is working on, and UNECE with its forum is able to provide assistance to the countries willing to have this assistance. There are also challenges related to the connectors, to charging stations, energy supply, which are very important, but UNECE and my division, we are not working on that. So what I'm going to talk about now doesn't cover these three aspects. I will present now what we call the World Forum for the Harmonization of Vehicle Regulations. This forum has a strange name, sorry about that, we didn't choose it. This is WP29. I will present the activities, the scope, and the organization. So this forum is a very old man, let's say, not very old, but old man, because it is more than 60 years old. And this forum was just given to UNECE by chance in a former time. No one would know that at this time that it would become so big and so international. So that's the reason why it was implemented in Geneva at the UN and UNECE. This World Forum is unique. There is no competition for that. There is no other forum at the UN. This forum is dealing with the automotive sector in general. And this forum is administrating 3 multilateral UN agreements. So it means there is a legal basis for the countries to interact. We have one agreement, which is the 1958 agreement. This is the oldest one. And this is an agreement in which we have a framework for developing type approval regulations. We have a younger agreement also, which is a 1998 agreement. I will explain a bit later. And we have also something on PTI, periodical technical inspection, which is also very important. Having safe and good cars when they are new is very good, but we should also make sure that they remain new over the time. So I talked a lot. I wanted to put in picture a bit what we do at WP29. At WP29, we develop the regulations that describes these tests that you can see. So we develop tests for emission of pollutants, CO2, for general safety, for example here for the general safety of a bus on the picture. We have regulations on passive safety, crash tests. We have regulations on noise, active safety, and also lighting, because lighting is an important aspect of safety. And what is the geographical scope of our forum? It is on this picture. You see some white marks, so we are not covering all the countries. Some of the countries here are white, but actually, well, this is an official slide, that's the reason why, but actually some of these countries are using in a unilateral manner the product of our work, so they just copy-paste in their own regulations. So there are more countries using the product of our work than you can see here. Here, this is a slide to show that we have a very complex structure with many groups. I think we don't need to go in details. What is interesting to notice is we have more than 40 groups and even 40 non-permanent technical groups. So it means each time there is something new, we have the capacity to develop a group and tackle the difficulty. And you imagine that if you have to do this structure in every country, you would use lots of resources. So I think it makes sense to have a global forum, so you don't need to use so much resources in terms of persons, money, etc. to tackle this subject. So our forum is open to any nations of the UN. The participation to our forum is open to states, governmental organizations, but also NGOs, the industry. We are excluding no one. Of course, at the end, because we talk about regulations, the decisions are taken by governments, not by the industry or any lobbying group. And I repeat, we are the only one having this structure, and we are very happy about that and proud about that. So why should you be involved in our forum? The automotive industry is a global industry, and every country has to mitigate the negative aspect of road transport. I'm talking here about accidents, pollutants, pollution, climate change, and in the past, leader countries in this time were asking themselves, should it be tackled on a national level or international level? And actually, the answer was given. They created this World Forum, which was not a World Forum at its creation. It was only for 6 or 7 countries in 1952. And since 2000, the forum became a World Forum, and every country is welcome. And I put a note in this picture, and I'm sure that many of you knows that. Developing regulations is technically difficult, long and expensive, and in addition it doesn't eliminate technical barrier to trade, and this is also causing sometimes some problems to countries. They have very, very good intention, and then they do some good regulations, but they have also problems with their neighbor countries, and they have to explain at the World Trade Organization. So yeah, developing regulations is not a simple thing. So having a World Forum to cooperate is actually helpful. Now, what can be the advantages? So there is a simplification of the work. There is also a simplification for doing the compliance testing. You don't have to do everything yourself. You can also work with your neighbor countries and simplify things. You have also well harmonized administrative procedures, so you can also copy, paste what the others are doing. And the advantage for your market is that usually through this international harmonization of regulations, you get safer and more environmentally friendly vehicles, in addition, at a reasonable price. It gives access to a broader range of vehicles. If your country is making specific regulations, maybe manufacturers won't be able to adapt all this range of products for your country for this specific regulation. So you might think twice before sending the vehicle to your market. But if the regulations are the same everywhere, of course you do your vehicle and then you can send it in every country. So in a nutshell, I would say the advantage of the harmonization is that you have access to state-of-the-art technologies and you don't have negative market distortion. Now, let's go deep into the regulations and agreements. So I have this slide with many bullet points. This is actually simpler than the slide. What I want to say with this 1958 agreement is that we have a framework which is open to every UN countries, and with this agreement we can develop technical regulations and we can implement them in our national laws. And there is an aspect which is related to the industry. We define that we make very complicated regulations that cost money to the industry to set high standards, and the industry is getting as an advantage that they do the work once, they do crash test once, they get an approval, and they can use this approval in several countries through the mutual recognition principle. This agreement also has something which is called a mark. So the agreement is setting the framework for this mark, and you can see even on the cars outside here, this mark, this E with a cycle, you can see it on the tires, maybe on the windows, the windshield, etc. We have something that helps country to identify if the product was in compliance with the UN regulation. This is this mark. This is very useful. And I can say also that we have very strict rules in terms of decision process. Usually we make decision at unanimity, but the agreement itself is saying that there is a way, if you are not present at the meeting, for example, then the war is not over, if I may say. You still can say no to New York, say explain that you don't want, for example, this new regulation to enter in place, and there is even the possibility to create a minority of blockage. So there are many mechanisms in this agreement to make sure that every country finds its advantage. This agreement is very old, and we are trying to make a revision of this agreement to make it a bit more modernized with data bank, with whole vehicle type approval, which is international, to make sure that more countries are willing to integrate it. Now we talk today about electric vehicles and hybrid electric vehicles. Just to show you, we have several regulations which are specific for this technology. We have, I made a list here, we have regulation number 10 on EMC, electromagnetic compatibility. We have regulations on emissions, CO2 emissions too, crash test, side impact test, electric safety. So if your country wants to do something, there is already a basis. You can have a look at what the international community did. So to show you now where this agreement is having impact, you see that this is mainly Europe broadly with the Russian Federation, but also Japan, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, a little part of North Africa with Egypt, Tunisia, and it's growing. I told you that we have a second agreement related to periodical technical inspection. This agreement has two rules which are similar to standards, probably for you. One is related to environmental issues, and the second one is related to safety inspection. We are revising also this agreement under the impulse of the Russian Federation. But I won't talk too much about that because I think we will have a presentation on PTI today. So to show you this agreement is also rather young. You see that the EU is not really part of it. It's more to the east side with the Russian Federation. And then the last agreement I would like to talk about, so the last tool for this international framework of regulations. This is a 1998 agreement. This agreement is also open to every UN member states. So this will be, of course, open to UAE and probably also to GCC, because I think GCC is a regional economic integration organization. So GCC could also apply it. This would probably minimize the impact, the burden on the countries of GCC. This agreement is providing standards, but without administrative provisions. This is the reason why we did it, because the USA mainly wanted to have something without administrative provisions. But because we don't have these administrative provisions, most of the countries applying this agreement also applied the 1958 agreement I presented earlier. This is providing simplification because with the agreement, the 1998 agreement, you are supposed to implement immediately or almost immediately the result of the work done under this agreement in your national regulation, which is a complicated work. If you apply the 1958 agreement, then you can use the excuse of the World Forum activities to say, I didn't do it myself because I do it with my colleagues in the framework of the harmonization. So this agreement, I repeat, is producing regulations but without administrative provisions. We have here also some interesting regulations on emissions of pollutants, on the safety of hydrogen and fuel cell vehicles, which apply to vehicles like Guichard outside. And I'm pretty sure that this vehicle comply with this regulation. And we are working right now on a draft GTR on electric vehicle safety. And here is the scope of this agreement. You see, the USA are contributing, Canada, the EU, Russian Federation, India, China, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, so a big part of the world is active here. So this is what I could say about the international framework for harmonized regulations that apply to the automotive sector. I hope that this was understandable, and if not, then please ask me questions. I will try to answer.
Thank you very much indeed, Francois. Do we have any questions for Francois? Sort of waiting. I'd like to start with one, which is the regulations that you listed on the screen there. Are they, again, are they aspirational regulations that countries are encouraged to adopt? Or are they more of a minimum standard that people should be adopting and then perhaps looking to go beyond?
Once a country signs the agreement and decides to apply one of the regulations, then this regulation is a real regulation. You have to comply with it. But a country that signs the agreement may also refuse to apply one of these regulations. So this is not automatically applied in your country. You need to just declare that you want to apply it in your country.
Question on the side there. Oh, one in the back, sorry. The microphone in the back. Yeah.
Francois, Andrew Cattell from DVSA UK. Can you just confirm to me whether your regulations and your GTR actually cover for commercial vehicles, which bring with them their own compromises also?
Our regulations can apply to every type of vehicles. It depends on the scope of single regulations. We have regulations that apply to motorcycle, we have regulations that apply to car, buses, trucks, but probably your question is related to PTI. And when we talk about PTI, at this stage, what is in force applies to trucks and buses.
Okay. Does that answer your question? Yeah, another question in the middle here. Microphone's just coming.
I understand that there is a requirement for the vehicle in terms of certification. Now, my question is, how long it will take for the type approval to take how long, for the manufacturer to take the type approved vehicle or model? If we're gonna apply the European standard.
I repeat, and these are not the European standards. It's unfortunate because of the name of our organization. So here, yes, at this stage, we have component regulations. We don't have a general vehicle approval. I explained that we are working on a revision of the agreement, and in 1 or 2 years, there will be a new regulation for the whole vehicle. Is it answering your question? You were asking also about the...
Yeah, I'm talking about, what I understand that the vehicle should be approved, right?
Yes.
Like the other European vehicle should be type approved, right?
With
Normally it's a process. How long it will take?
If it depends. If the test is very short and you have an administration which is rather reactive, it can take 20 days for one approval. If the test is very long, and we have some emission testing where we simulate the performance of the vehicle over the lifetime, then it takes much more time.
This will be a new product, right?
For a new product, yes. A crash test, unfortunately, a crash is very, very short, so a crash test, you crash the test in a few milliseconds. So the test is short, and then the administrative part is a bit longer. For emissions, the test is longer, and then the administrative part is not so long.
Thank you. Any other questions for Francois? No? Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.